Alright guys, that's Huke and I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. FormaL has given his perspective on how he thinks things are going right now in that gentleweights camp after a disastrous last couple of weeks, culminating in a loss last night to G2. A big weekend for gentleweight to try and bounce back. Yesterday certainly did not go their way. Do the Major 1 champions have a road back, especially after all the talk before the season began that things went wrong for this team? Maybe the personalities could start to clash. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We had a couple of more interesting series late last night. Falcons 3-0ing Toronto, certainly not on my bingo card. This is the type of series where Toronto 3-0'd their last couple of series that they played. Falcons have been terrible at search and destroy. So on paper you're thinking, well, it's kind of difficult for Falcons to win this because Toronto have been cooking in the respawns, so surely they're at least going to win one or two of those. You'd then think, well, bare minimum then if Falcons are going to win it might be in a game 5, so but their search hasn't been good enough, so it was kind of difficult to see a path to success. But Exnid pops off in the hardpoint, they win the game 1, and really the deciding factor in this series was this, with Toronto up 5-1 in the search and destroy. Then they bottled it, right? This was bad. Falcons come back and take the 6-5 win, and they run away with the overload as well. So Toronto, like, you don't see that too often. A team gets 3-0s back to back to back, and then they get 3-0'd themselves by a team that you wouldn't necessarily expected. Joe with a 0.7, CleanX with a 0.7, Insight with a 0.7, Kips with a 0.8. So yeah, there you go. Falcons just continue to be a somewhat confusing team. If the search and destroy goes differently, who knows how this game concludes. The bottom line is clearly not all of Toronto's problems have been solved, and that is the query about where the league even stands right now. We've been trying to figure out who is OpTic's contender. Do they have one? Do they have a team that can push them? Gentlemates, what we're going to talk about then, they've fallen off massively over the last couple of weeks. FaZe are not good enough consistently enough anyway, as we see. Thieves, they might be in the ballpark, but they're still not close to OpTic, it doesn't appear. And then we thought, okay, maybe Toronto in the mix for top 4, but now all of a sudden, that's a question mark as well. So yeah, there's no doubt that we are playing in different tiers here, and there is only one S-tier team, at least on recent evidence. Cloud9 somehow got a win here against Boston on the Overloads. This map was crazy because they got outslayed here by 27 kills. HyDra was -9, Nejra was -3, Encourager's -5, so what is that, 17? And then, yeah, -10 for Okis to make it 27. And still, Boston lose the map. But they did farm some nice KDs. They won the game 4 anyway, so it is what it is. It wasn't absolutely disastrous for C9, but yeah, nowhere near good enough. They continue to flounder. Purge nicely farms with a 1.4. Snoopy farms with a 1.3. All of a sudden, the SMG duo is looking pretty good again, but I'm not sure that really counts against Cloud9. So those are the two series of last night. Merc was gassing up ProLoot a little bit, kind of interesting, of course, because we know ProLoot on that Bush team, the original Bush quartet with ProLoot, but it was Tej who got signed, it was Spart who's now been signed, and of course it was Capsule who's now been signed as well. Is ProLoot next up from the Bush? That is an interesting question. I imagine one of those guys is going to get picked up again at some point. It's still a fairly long season to still go. Now, Aluka is FaZe's sub, and yeah, we talked about this yesterday, but it looks like Aluka is indeed available now to have the work visa sorted and get to FaZe if they need him. The question is, what will FaZe do with their roster if things continue as they have done? At least for FaZe, it's kind of straightforward, because if you want to make a change, you've paid money for Aluka to have him sit on the bench, you put him in, right? Now, the roles are a bit of a question mark. Can Aluka run the sub? Would you need to put, let's say it was 04 to make way. It could be Drazah, but let's say it was 04. Would you put Drazah to the sub? Would Aluka run the sub? I think Aluka probably can and probably would run the sub, but would that really work? Those are questions, but at least you've got a bench player. You've paid money to put him there. You're going to put him in if you are going to make a change. Whereas for Gentlemates, it's far less straightforward in many respects. Simp obviously wasn't happy with their 3-0 loss. They'll be back next weekend. But it was bad for Gentlemates for sure, right? Especially because they've also got a match coming up today. They play Surge. I mean, look, you got to think they're getting the win there, but they've still got to play OpTic. They've still got to play FaZe. They've still got to play Thieves. And Boston are in the mix as well. So, all over the place for Gentlemates as of late. But as I've said, for FaZe, if you've got problems, you kind of know where to go. Whereas for Gentlemates, what do you even do? You've won the first major. There's no logic in making a roster change or anything. So you've just got to try and, I think all year, really, there's no logic in a roster change. I mean, who would you even get in that scenario anyway? So I think Gentlemates, they've got to recognize that they have to just run it out as a team, especially now they've won the first event. Could we see a New York situation from, 2023, when they won the first event, then they fell off kind of big time, then they came back and won the World Championship at the end of the year, back-to-back tournaments? Possible, very rare. It's got to be said, very rare. And I think it also takes a certain level of temperament on a team to get away with that, because we have seen teams, they get to the top, they fall off, they're mentally boomed, right? They totally collapse internally. And we always feared that Gentlemates, with the personalities they have, that was not an impossibility with the roster that they've put together. Ace was popping off on Envoy. He's had that great stage 1, not continued in the stage 2 so far. He had a few thoughts on that I'll share, but also FormaL giving his take, especially after the series is over. FormaL looks at it and says, look, this cannot be pretty internally, and he's definitely not wrong. The question then becomes, how can they rebound from this tricky situation they find themselves in?
Ayatollah Envoy definitely not helping them.
What did you just call him?
He's a terrorist. He's costing this team right now.
He's crazy.
Where's Benjay when we need him to fight back
right now?
Well, Simp turned it around, obviously, from his online not trying, but like these guys, Tom, they're shit in the sheets. If you click Envoy's last 3, he's been terrible in all of them.
Let me take a look.
And
Envoy double moons.
And died, and then it blows up. Well,
It's so weird in that room now, man.
Frustrations they already have, but what?
Because like the loss of C9, you can kind of brush that off as like whatever.
I mean, it's both teams that were looking to rebound off of some losses.
The 3-0 Toronto kind of pisses you off. This one is the one that pisses you off even more after a week of scrimming M teams as well. I mean, yeah. The first map kind of told the tale of the series, man. They just choked the fuck out of the game one.
So disastrous couple of weeks. They lose to Cloud9. Sib breaks GAs in that series. They get blacklisted from scrims. They can't scrim the other pro teams. They've spent the last week scrimming against amateur teams. Doesn't really seem to have helped them at all. Look, the idea is that if you break GAs, you get punished and you lose a quality of practice that might well hurt you. So this is just how it is, unfortunately for Paris, but they're in a tricky spot. I don't know what they do. As I say, they've just got to ride out the wave, I suppose, see what happens at the major. But if they crash and burn at the major, then it's a really bad predicament, especially because they're currently 3-3. We did look at the standings briefly yesterday, and we'll see what the implications are in a second. But they're currently 6th place, which is right on the border of guaranteed bracket or being in the play-in. Now, they're gonna make it. They're not gonna be bottom 2. That's probably gonna be Surge and Cloud9. And if Paris get the win against Surge today, then things are a little bit better. But, that certainly doesn't fix the issues. If they were to beat Surge, we know that they've been a problem to get any map wins for some time. Again, the map counts this season are not good for either of these teams. You look at the season standings, you see a pretty similar story as well. Just a couple of things on Mercules and OpTic more generally. This stage, Merc is currently sitting at a 1.72 search and destroy KD, which is absurd. His search KD so far are 1.22. Last stage he had a 1.52, so this just considers the qualifiers rather than the major itself. But just ridiculous, especially because that's 13th all time. There have been plenty better in the 1.7s, 1.8s. Cell has the record Vanguard stage 1 at a 2.6. But you'll note really that for the vast majority of these stages, there were only 5 maps played, or 5 series played. And some of those teams will only have played 5-6 maps of Search and Destroy in that time period. So Mercules is doing this over the first 6 series that OpTic have played, 7 series and other OpTic have played. So that's very impressive. And they've got 4 more to go. Will he be able to maintain that number? Doubtful, right? But to do so over such a big sample size is definitely making this one of the more impressive search and destroy runs that we have ever seen from a player. And Doug Lee puts together here what this looks like in terms of seeding. So Based on upcoming simulations of potential match results, OpTic are guaranteed to make the bracket at the very least. They're the only team that's guaranteed to make the bracket. If Thieves were to lose out, they could find themselves in a position where they are in 7 through 10. As you guys can see here, you want to be top 6 to guarantee a bracket spot. 7 through 10, you go to the tournaments, but you've got to earn it. And then 11 through 12, you don't even go. So, yeah, right now, this is how it looks. Obviously, with FaZe's defeat and getting 3-0'd, they are right down there, right? But theoretically, they still should be fine to at least make it to the play-in. But the problem for them is that actually making top 6 for the bracket is actually a very slim chance. I think it's really worth keeping this in mind right now, is that FaZe are 10th, obviously. I know that he's got them sitting at 11th here behind Surge, but, you know, they've only got 2 wins. But whatever the case is, FaZe are sitting in a pretty bad predicament because they're 3 and 5. Their map count isn't good after getting 3-0'd yesterday. So it's very unlikely that they get all the way up here to be a top 6 seed, especially because their upcoming games, obviously they've just played OpTic, but they've still got to play Gentlemates and they play Ravens next weekend as well, and then there's Cloud9. So yeah, not the easiest run for those guys at all, and the chances of them making the play-in are pretty high, right? It's probably Surge that will drop out of that, but the chances of them making the bracket and guaranteeing a spot in the bracket at the major is pretty slim right now. Their more likely situation is to be one of the absolute lower seeds. Cloud9 are cooked. Their chances of even making the play-in are very small, even if they have some great results to come. Presumably it's Surge in the other side of things, right? But yeah, definitely the FaZe story is one of the more interesting. These, though, are the games of today to close out the weekend. Thieves Heretics is real interesting because Thieves lost to FaZe the other day. They kind of need a bounce-back win in some respects to at least show that they're somewhere in the same ballpark as where OpTic might be right now. But Heretics had a great result the other day. You know, maybe it's Heretics. Maybe Heretics are the team we should be looking for to be a threat come the LAN event. It's really tough to say who to look for apart from OpTic. Toronto need a bounce-back win as well. Boston did get a win yesterday, but I don't know if they can follow it up today. OpTic then play Ravens. Again, it's online. It is what it is, but I think the Ravens, like, let's say the fear that people had of Ravens online play may have been disapparated, may have been disarmed to a certain extent, and OpTic are obviously OpTic. And then Surge Gentlemates. The final series really could be interesting. It shouldn't be, obviously, but after getting 3, like, I thought G2 could well win that series yesterday, but I at least thought that if they did, it would probably be in 5, whereas the fact that Gentlemates got 3-0'd makes me think that, like, Surge maybe could even win this in 5, but yeah, I still think I have to take Gentlemates just because I think Surge are pretty bad, but, like, you know, who knows, maybe they get the capsule buff, they get a little bit of a honeymoon period, and that would put Gentlemates from a spot where FormaL says it's not good in that camp to maybe blow it up territory. So Beaumonts, enjoy your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.